Hey guys, welcome back to the GM's Table. This is try number 2. If you saw the video yesterday, it came up and the audio was bad, so we're having to re-record it. But I wanted to do a buyer's guide for D&D 5th edition. With the holidays coming out, maybe you have people you know that want to get into D&D. Maybe you want to get into D&D. Maybe you want to try out the newest edition, don't know where to start, or you're just someone completely new. Because of that, or even if it's after the holidays, because of that, I wanted to do a guide of what I feel are some of the best orders and why I put them in that order books to get for D&D 5th edition, ranging all the way from if you got no cash to spend to if you want to buy it all eventually. So with that, we're actually going to shift off of the vlog format over to here, and I'm going to have to go like this and slide sideways because I'm going to be pulling some stuff up. So to get things started, we're going to start at $0. What if you want to get in the 5th edition and you don't have any cash to spend, which is fine. It's actually okay. We don't talk about it as much, and that 5th edition's been out for years. But when they released 5th edition, this edition, Wizards of the Coast, was cool enough to go and be like, let's have a free version. And they do. I'm not talking about pirating stuff. I'm not going to bring up piracy at all. If that's your route to do things, this isn't where we're going to have that conversation. This is the legal places to get these books. So going in with that, it's worth noting, I'm going to have a link down below. When 5th edition came out, Wizards of the Coast came out with a version called D&D Basic. There are 2 PDFs. The link below is going to send you to a page that's going to have the player's PDF and the Dungeon Master's PDF. My list is basically built off knowing you can get this information for free, because that shifts what books you buy first. So to start things off, we have the player's rules. And going into the player's rules, making sure I have it. Yep. All right. You go around. It doesn't have everything this has. Oh, this is Xanthar's guide. It doesn't have everything this has. The player's handbook. It definitely doesn't have what's in Xanthar's guide. But it has enough to get you started. If we check out the book, it intro, all of that, adventures, blah, 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 step-by-step character creation. This is the character creation rules, basically right out of the full-price player's handbook. Choosing your class, all of that. It has the rules for point buy. So if you don't want to roll your dice and you want everybody to, be on a level playing field and not leave it to chance, the rules are here for that, including the arrays. Discussion of ability scores. It has the full XP chart from 1st to 20th. The classes provided in here go from 1st to 20th. This is actually pretty important to me. This means you can build a character using just these rules. Even if all your friends are using the fancy books and you don't have that money, but you want to be involved and you want to build off things you have so you can reference it or anything like that, you're not going to have as many options, but you'll be able to play every level of the game with them. So going into it, there are races. There's going to be 4 races here without going through all of it. You have humans, elves, dwarves, and halflings. Now, something to note in here. There's only one type of human, one type of elf, one type of dwarf, one type of halfling in this book. The player's handbook has 2 versions of each of those. Elves technically have 3 if you count the drow, because they are there in the player's handbook. Just not too many people allow them from the get-go. That does mean it's half of each class, but that's fine. If you're just getting into the game, one version of each race actually keeps players from getting overwhelmed. So jumping through all of those, looking, again, if you want to read this, free in the link down below. Classes. So here's the thing. There are also 4 classes in this book. In fact, they're down at the bottom over there if the resolution comes through nice enough. You have a cleric, a fighter, a rogue, and a wizard. Now, just like the races, you get one option for each. 5th edition is built where every class you can then choose from a selection of subclasses to kind of more define what you're playing as. In the basic rules, there's only one. Now, what they did was they took the classic version of each class. So your cleric is the I heal everybody. It's the domain of life, but it's the healing-centric cleric. The fighter is the champion, which is the no-nonsense, no extra mechanics, no frills, but they're very, very good at what they do. Fighter. They get a better chance to score critical hits. I believe they eventually get a small armor buff. They get all these little things that aren't mechanically complex, which is perfect for brand new players. And again, everything you need. The rogue is the thief archetype. For any of us who've been playing before 3rd edition, you may actually remember when the rogue wasn't even a class. It was called the thief. And that's what they brought in. I'm fine with that, because when most people think of rogues, they think of the guy who's picking locks and stealing things. That is this rogue. Then the wizard is the evocation wizard. He's the blaster. He's damage focused. You still get spells. We're going to get into that when we're towards the end of this PDF. But where their specialty and their bonuses are damage dealing and kind of combat-y, which is, again, fine. It's a very classic wizard that when a fight comes out, they just blast stuff. So shooting through all the classes, again, as you can see, full 20 levels, full thing on spell lists, or spell slots. And these are the class levels just out of the player's handbook. These aren't watered down versions of the classes. In fact, each of these subclasses are in the player's handbook. And if you pick that subclass in the player's handbook, it's the exact same thing. Okay? They're giving you the full version of these classes. This is actually one, when I was reading back through, I was surprised because I thought that they weren't in here, is the personality and background section still here too. At average heights, weights, whatever. But more importantly, they don't have all of them, but they have the rules for inspiration, which I still wish Xanathar had a few more rules to put more meat. I love the concept of this. I don't think it was implemented perfectly. But as if you think it's watered down here, it's the exact same rules out of the player's handbook. But what they don't have as many of are backgrounds. But they provide backgrounds. I believe there's 5 in this PDF. Yeah, you have the Acolyte, which is your religious person, your priest, a criminal, a folk hero, a noble, and a sage. So, at this point, we have 4 races, 4 classes. That's already 16 different character combinations. When you add in the 5 backgrounds, that is 90 character combinations, okay? That is a ton of characters in the free PDF. Yes, there are going to be combinations of the same 4, 4, and 5. This is the free version. This is kind of your sampling to get you hooked and get you in. But again, if you have no cash and you want to get into D&D, it's right here. Now, I will say right up front again with the no cash, D&D runs off dice. Funky dice. This is more than a full set, because I also run Savage Rules, so I carry extra D6s. But you can get dice roller apps for free for your phone or your tablet. So if you have any kind of Android device, any Apple device, anything, there's a free dice roller app. Okay? And realistically, if you just have access to a computer somewhere, which if you're watching me, you have either a phone, a tablet, or a computer, go to Roll20 or look up a website. I'm not going to give specific links on where to go, because these things are so prevalent and everywhere online and free. Just use an app for it. I prefer dice, but again, at the $0 method, you got everything you need. Oh, and the soldier. I actually missed one. Okay, so either way, you got a ton of backgrounds. We go into equipment. This is the armor table from the player's handbook. It flat out is. Discussing different armor types and all that. Light, medium, donning, doffing, and taking off armor. Yeah. I was like, I thought they'd call it doffing because that's the right word, just people don't use it anymore. And they do. Awesome. But all those rules for that, the things on weapons, weapon proficiency, the full weapon table, like the gear you need to adventure, your armor, your weapons, your basic adventuring gear are all in this PDF. You don't need the player's handbook for this. Full list, again, all with prices. I was actually surprised. I was like, okay, so maybe they don't cover lifestyles or anything too intricate. They have the full equipment packs because they have the starting gear for characters, so they wanted to have everything there. None of it got rewritten. It's literally copy-pasted. But you still have the tools. You have the lifestyles. You have really everything in here. And the thing that surprised me the most in the equipment section is they still give you the really cool D100 trinket list. It's not as nicely laid out as in the book, but these are fun if you want to give little baubles or items that might seem magical or you want to make them magical but aren't super powerful. The trinket list is great for this. Now, going beyond that, they do discuss multi-classing and feats and your customization options. They discuss them here They don't have the rules for multi-classing. They don't have the rules for feats in here because those are actually optional rules in 5th. To play 5th, you don't have to use either of them. So they acknowledge they're here, but they don't give you the rules for that. They got to have a little bit of a hook for you to buy this book. But going on, playing the game, all the rules you need. Seriously, this is all the rules for the game to just run it. It's none of the super complex stuff that could be added, but it's everything there. You got your adventuring rules, you got your combat rules, rules on resting. All of it is here, and it is free. Finally, rules of magic. Casting spells, whatever. I'm not going all the way to the end, because everything after that, here it is. Now, all they have in here that cast spells are the cleric and the wizard. But here's spell list. It's not every spell from the player's handbook, and definitely not ones from supplements. But as you can see, if you're someone who's like, man, I want to play a wizard, wizards are going to need the player's handbook because they have all the spells and, you know, look at all the options you have here. Okay? For a free PDF that is official, you get a ton of stuff. Now, I will say, that PDF alone will give a player everything they need, but it's not everything to run the game. Luckily, they provide 2 free PDFs, and the second one, I gotta close this PDF, is the Dungeon Masters PDF. Now, I will say, funny that they call it the Dungeon Masters PDF because there's not a ton from the Dungeon Masters Guide in this PDF. Personally, I think it's so much better because what is in here is monsters. This is all of the open source material for monster stats, which basically means this is the who's who of what you would expect in a monster manual. Now, it does not have the Beholder, it does not have the Mind Flayer, it doesn't have the ones that are specifically licensed by D&D under the D&D name that you can't use without renaming in other products. But as far as goblins, bandits, guards, actually, we need to get to bandits and guards in a second because they're in their own section in this book, which is just like the monster manual. But before that, you have dragons, you have goblins, you have dinosaurs, apes. Like, this is, if you're looking to possibly run your own adventures or looking to making a simple adventure and you don't have cash, this has so much material. Now, they don't separate out monsters and like mundane animals like dogs and wolves. It's all lumped together in this one. The monster manual does have your animal creatures in the back in its own appendix, but that's a small gripe because this is a very full PDF, but it's not the tome that is the monster manual, so you're not going through as much. You got gargoyles, all kinds of fun stuff. When we get to the end, and it's going to take a while because this just gives you an idea of how many monsters are in here. And zombies, and then we go here. Non-player characters, all your humans or dwarves or anything that's like a person that you're much more likely to deal with social interactions than just flat out fight, or the filler that are humans that you flat out fight are here, and they still kept them in their own appendix. Acolytes, you got your priests, you got your bandits. Berserkers are tougher bandits. You got commoners, guards, knights, cultists. Between bandits, commoners, cultists, guards, and knights, you really have all the stats you would ever need for a starting adventure. Because you just make it with people. But yeah, and you got a few casters, you got a mage, you got a true priest, not just an acolyte, and thugs. Then they have the the Dungeon Master's Guide rules for building encounters. They're here, and it's the full suite of rules. When I get into Xanthars, because they have their own encounter building rules, I'm going to discuss which ones I think are better for new GMs. But they're here. They have stuff for modifying encounters. And then after that, they still give you magic items. They give you free magic items. It's not, again, just like with classes, with races, with the monsters, it's not everything that's in the paid for books. But they're here, and it has the staples. It has your +1, +2, +3 items. It has things like the Gauntlets of Ogre Power, the Goggles of Night. Bags of Holding are in here, I believe. Double checking. Yeah, Bag of Holding's there. Bag of Holding's there, you're good. Honestly. It's not a huge list. If you check, it's what? 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. If you count each rings of resistance separately, 26. We'll just say levels of spell instead of every spell. So another 9. So 35, 40, 41, 44 items right here. Was there armor? Okay, armor, pluses, weapons, pluses. They don't give ammunition. Whatever. That is huge. Then there's this, and this is actually something I super appreciate because these free PDFs were updated and supported for quite a while as the books got supported. Because when books get printed, it's hard to update, and there's a rat of PDFs. One of the issues with the monster manual is there was no Appendix of Monsters by CR. You have to get the Dungeon Master's Guide to get it. All the monsters in this PDF have an appendix, which means building encounters, if you're just using this, is self-contained and amazingly simple. And then, advertisement. What comes next? And we make that disappear. And we're back. Since I'm not talking about PDFs anymore, I'm just going to go back to the vlog and shift. Oh no, it's running my intro. There we go. So as I was saying, since we're done with PDFs, I'm going to go back to the blog normal. Poster's still not up. It won't stick to the wall for some reason. I think it's cold. There might be moisture. Anyways, those are your free PDFs. If you are at a 0 price point, you can still get into the hobby. Now, I will say, the next thing I suggest buying is the cheapest thing, and it's dice. Dice are going to run you from about $7.50 all the way up to $16, all the way up to $50, $60 if you're buying like gunmetal dice and really nice dice. But a set online can run you about $7. If you go to a game shop and you want to support your local game stores, I typically see them anywhere from 10 to 15, depending on the store. Now, with that, if we're moving beyond that, there's really 2 options for your next tier. I will say, if you don't have dice and you're willing to drop anywhere from 10 to $20, again, it ranges on when you're buying it. I typically see it about $20 to $15. I strongly suggest if you're brand new to D&D, if you don't even have dice, get the starter set. Honestly, just get the starter set. It comes with pre-made characters that go up to level 3. But as we discussed, you can get all the information to take them past that and all the information to make your own characters for free. Get the starter's guide, because the starter's guide, we'll say $20, because that's what it's supposed to be marked at. You get a set of dice in it. So you already got that covered. It doesn't come with maps, because 5th edition, they're trying to not make it as focused on minis, but it does come with an adventure, The Lost Mines of Phandelver. And The Lost Mines of Phandelver may be the best written adventure that has come out for 5th edition, especially for starting adventures. That's not knocking the other ones, just it's a very good sampling of what D&D has to offer. It's actually 3 smaller adventures with a hub town, which means the players can go and do whatever they want in whatever order they want. And it's going to typically get them, I believe it's up to 3rd or 5th level. And that's awesome. It's a great product. If you are intimidated by writing your own adventures, I strongly suggest Lost Mines of Phandelver. Now, as I said, that only takes you about 5 levels, and I think it's 5. I misspoke when I said they go to 3. I believe they go to 5th. Excuse me. If that's the case, go for it. Now, if you're someone who doesn't want to write your own adventures, or, sorry, if you're someone who does want to write your own adventures, or if you're a player and you very much trust your GM, this is the must-have book. The Player's Handbook is the book you should have if you're going to buy any single book. This book is going to get used more than any other book they print. It just is. Because not only is it all the races, which there are way more races in the Player's Handbook. Not only is it all the classes, which there's way more base classes, as well as at least 3 subclasses, I believe, except for Bard. At least 3 subclasses for every class Bard gets to. There are tons of options. There's also the Feats, if you want to play with Feats. There's the rules on multi-classing. But it also has a much nicer printed version of all those rules in the free PDF. And sometimes having a better physical version to reference really does make all the difference. Now, if you're super happy with the basic rules, you don't care about this. Maybe you're a GM and you're like, okay, I want to invest further than Lost Mines. Maybe I want to see what a much larger campaign looks like, but I don't want to invest fully in the game. And maybe you only have $30 to spend total. Then you have a choice between the Player's Handbook and getting something like Hoard of the Dragon Queen, or Out of the Abyss. Now, Out of the Abyss is a full campaign that'll take you up to, I believe, 16th or 17th level. Horde of the Dragon Queen only takes you to about 9, because it's Horde of the Dragon Queen, and then there's a sequel, Rise of Tiamat, and they're 2 separate books. Horde of the Dragon Queen and Rise of Tiamat are cheaper. You typically see those about $20 to $25 because they're much smaller. The thing is, I'm not talking about Against the Giants. I'm not talking about Curse of Strahd, because those 2 adventures, the first 2 adventures, were written specifically so that the only material you need other than that book is the free PDF. The other adventures are great as well, but you only need the free material to run those. They're not going to reference books you don't have, and that's pretty important. Now, personally, I feel pre-written campaigns should come later, get some test run in, especially the big ones. You want pre-written, go for the starter set. It's something small, it's something self-contained. It gives you a good feel of how to make things with goblins and with kobolds and bandits and all of that kind of stuff. But if you are the kind of person who wants a big epic story from the start but not to write it, I do acknowledge those 2 books and definitely say they're great resources for that, but they will be kind of intimidating for new GMs, especially if you haven't run other editions of D&D, because these are much bigger adventures. Horde of the Dragon Queen, I have a bit of a problem because it starts with like a whole town's on fire and there's a bunch of stuff to do in the town to try and help different people all at once. That can be a lot to take in for a new GM. Out of the Abyss starts with the characters in prison, and there's like 7 to 9 NPCs, all with very distinct personalities because they also have forms of madness, each and every one of them. And it's supposed to start with a whole role-playing thing with all of these NPCs. That can be intimidating. It's great fun when you're experienced, but for a new GM, I get that. That is intimidating. But moving on. Again, if you're looking at about a $30, I've seen this as low as $25. But if you're looking for about a $30 point of entry, and you're okay writing your own adventures, the only one you have to download now is the Dungeon Masters PDF, because the players one's all going to be in here. Grab this book. If you got an extra $7 to $15, also pick up dice, because dice are just great. Honestly, if you don't, that's fine. Again, Dice Roller app's going to work with the book too. It'll work with all of them. Dice are completely optional at this point. So far, none of this is much of a surprise. This is what a lot of people suggest in their buying guides. This is where I'm going to deviate, because I'm not going to tell you which one should I get next, the Monster Manual or the DMG, and which one's third is the one I didn't pick. I actually think you should stray from the core when you look at the free material you can already use. Between adventures that don't need the Monster Manual, and between the free DMG, which is basically a free mini Monster Manual, I don't think that book is as necessary. Personally, my list has changed in the last month or so, because the second book I think you should own is Xanathar's Guide. I heavily endorse this, and not just, oh, this book's amazing. I will say, I picked it up for $30. This is very much worth $30. If you're seeing it for $60, it is not worth it. If you're seeing it for $40 is about the top limit I would pay for this book. Just because here's a player's handbook. Here's Xanathar's Guide. It's a supplement. It's much thinner, but it's new, it's shiny, so it's a little more expensive. This book is a must-have for me because of 2 parts. First is this section. We already talked about tool proficiency and stuff, and the basics of how tool proficiencies work are in that free PDF. It's the exact same rules of what's in the player's handbook. The thing is Xanathar's Guide is when they actually expanded it to make tool proficiencies worth it. This is the material I feel should have been in the player's handbook, is the tool proficiencies. It's been a few years. Obviously, they evolved from it, and they didn't know this is what they wanted at the time. But that is kind of a must-have for me. The other part is the encounter building. There's a different way to do encounters, which is much faster and much simpler here. It's not as exacting. It's not as perfect of tuning the exact difficulty you want. But if you're a new GM just hopping in, or a GM with not as much time on your hands, this can whip encounters together half the time at least for me. On top of that, there's a bunch of players material. You'll get more subclasses for every one of the core classes. There's racial feats, which I wasn't really wowed by the racial feats in here. I'm also going to note, and they say in the book, and they've always been transparent about, the class options in here, and even the encounter building thing existed on their website in a series of articles known as Unearthed Arcana. Thing to know about Unearthed Arcana if you're new to the D&D community is it's playtest. They're awesome enough and smart enough to know to give out material for free online, get people to get it, use it, try it out, and then we turn in surveys that tell them what we liked and didn't like. You don't have to do the surveys, but they would like you to, because that's the whole point of the system. That means just about every class option in here exists for free online, but they're not quite the same. All of them have been tweaked at least a little bit because those were playtests. They weren't the finished product. If you're okay with kind of unbalanced systems, or you just don't have the money for it, check out Unearthed Arcana. But if you want the official one, if you want ones that say there's a game at your local game shop and they're doing Adventurous League, which is the official D&D play, Unearthed Arcana is not legal. Xanathar's Guide is. You're allowed to use material from this book. I do always give that heads up because there's some people that are like, half the book's already free. I say the point of purchase of this is the tool proficiencies, which wasn't in Unearthed Arcana. There's other cool things. There's encounter tables, which are really great if you're a GM looking to have quick encounters. This plus the Dungeon Master's free PDF is really, I think, all you need to GM the system and like do it really well for quite a while. But that's kind of how I stand. I think the second book you should buy after starter sets or any of the free stuff is Xanathar's Guide. It's just, for me, it's a must-have because there's some rules you really need. Oh, I don't have my DMG or Monster Manual with me. So next up is kind of a split for me. It depends what you're going to do with your campaign. After you have those, it then comes to something pretty important. After everything's set up, and I don't expect this to be right when you buy it. Stop there if you haven't started playing yet. Really, honestly, you should stop at the Player's Handbook and just play some using that material. Once you got a hold of it, or maybe you already have, and you know you want to expand your library, the question comes in. Do your adventures heavily include kobolds, goblins, orcs, or mind flayers? If any of those guys are big focuses in your adventure, like if you're doing a campaign about taking out goblins or hunting down kobolds and the kobolds who worship dragons or something like that in your own written campaigns, I suggest Volo's Guide next. Because Volo's Guide, while it's not the core monster manual, it has variant versions of all of those creatures, variants of other creatures as well. But in the beginning, there's kind of an ecology section. So like kobolds, they talk about the kobold society, how kobolds work, and they give you a map of a kobold den. For goblins, they talk about how all the different goblins interact, and they give you a goblin camp. Things like that. It really helps you build out. Now, if you're thinking, but I don't have the monsters manual, I don't have the basic goblin, I'll just have variants. I don't have the basic kobold, I'll just have variants. The kobold, the goblin, and the orc in their basic versions, and I think basically the monster manual's variants, like there's a winged kobold and things like that, are in that free PDF. Your basic kobolds there, your basic goblins there, your basic orcs there. I will say the Mind Flayer isn't because it's owned by Wizards of the Coast. So yes, I shouldn't have included Mind Flayers. It's really kobolds, goblins, or orcs. If you're doing that in that fringe case, get Volos next. Because that's going to let you have stuff to build up a campaign and really build up an infrastructure and how those monsters work so much better. That's a fringe case. Any other setup, I actually say Monster Manual. Because if you're already writing your own adventures, the Monster Manual is going to give you more monsters, more NPCs, just more. As well as the ones you had are going to have better write-ups, are going to have little paragraphs that explain them a little more, explain them in the world, not just stat blocks. So that's a really great use of it. Monster Manual is, again, I'm not going to say Monster Manual is a must, because you have a mini Monster Manual. But once you're expanding and say you feel like that's getting stale or you want to go beyond that, definitely eventually pick up the actual monster manual. After that, say you got Volos, after that's not the monster manual. And say you got the monster manual, after that isn't Volos. The fourth book I feel like you should pick up, no matter which one you picked up for third, is the Dungeon Master's Guide. This is 4 down the list. That's because most of the Dungeon Master's Guide is options. It's, hey, here's a way to change the rules in the player's handbook. Hey, here's a variant. Hey, here's a mechanic you can add on top. Like, we need a loyalty system, a code of honor system, a sanity system. They're there and they can throw on. The most necessary thing, I think, in the Dungeon Master's Guide is there's also rules for modifying or creating your own monsters. This is actually pretty important in case you go, oh, okay, so my players aren't powerful enough to fight a priest, but an Acolyte's just kind of wimpy and I want him to be a big boss at this level. Well, then we take the Acolyte and we beef him up a little bit. And in the Dungeon Master's Guide, it tells you how, not in the Monster Manual. So that's kind of important. Yes, the Monster Manual also has more magic items, but as I said, the free PDF gives you plenty to kind of work with. As well as if you picked up Xanathar's Guide, you have all the little common magic items, which are these little ones that aren't powerful, but they're fun little gadgets to play with and do little tricks. Nothing game-breaking. So between the free PDF and Xanathar's, you're going to have a ton of little magic items, and some big ones, but they'll be rarer. However, the DMG does give you more. It doesn't give you a crap ton. Like, there's definitely more. There's probably about at least, I want to say 8 times as many magic items, just looking at how many were in the free PDF. So, yes, if you care about magic items, the DMG's there. They have tables from randomly generating dungeons. Now, I will say, I've always been a person who prefers physical tables over digital ones. When it comes to dungeon generation, there's like, oh, I got a rule for the size of the room, then I got a rule for the number of doors, I got that I go digital. Because it's just table on table on table on table for one chunk. And then we gotta move to the next chunk. And table. It's just, it can be very time consuming. If I'm not just drawing the dungeon I want to draw, that I actually don't love out of a book. It's just too much at once. It's not worth my time, basically. But that said, everything else in the DMG is really pretty good. Also, if you're a new DM, there's a lot of great tips. But, as I've said, there's a free version, which is a monster manual. It has the things you really, really need from the DMG in it. So, yeah, it's 4th on my list. Again, as I said, 4th on my list after the starter set and any adventure you want to run. Because those can go before everything. That's just a preference thing of how you want to handle things. But you have the DMG, and finally at the very end is, if you haven't picked up the Monster Manual and you picked up Volos first, now get the Monsters Manual. Now expand beyond the ecology you've already worked on. If you already picked up the Monster Manual, now pick up Volo's Guide. Because Volo's Guide also has monstrous races. If you have players that really want to do something weird, like be a lizard man and you're cool with it. Or if you want to build up lizard man NPCs with class levels and stuff like that. Now you have it in Volo's Guide. You have all the ecologies. You have a ton more monsters. That is useful stuff. Volo's Guide is a great book. It's just very much a supplemental book. Now I will also say there's a book I haven't talked about. And there's the Sword Coast Adventurous Guide. Honestly, it's become even more a waste of money because they're going to be reprinting stuff from it. We've already seen it. In Xanathar's, there are 4 subclasses for Rogue. 2 of them are the 2 subclasses from Sword Coast. They are, and it's the only subclasses in Sword Coast. Now, yes, Sword Coast also has a couple for each of the classes and stuff like that. But the thing to note with Sword Coast Adventure, guys, it's specifically if you're wanting to play in the Forgotten Realms, it's a setting book. It's not even all of the Forgotten Realms. It's a setting book for like one small region. I honestly don't think it was their best decision on how they made this book. It has some good stuff in it, but it's about 75% fluff and like this much actual material that's usable. And chunks of that material are already in Xanathar's. I will also note for you, if you're doing organized play or if you want to play like organized play, Xanathars points out stuff that Adventurous League use, which is for players this rule of the player's handbook plus one. You get the player's handbook and one other book. Xanathars blows Sword Coast Adventurer's Guide out of the water. There's a couple things I'd still love to see. There's things like Warlocks can take Path of the Undying, where you get your power from a Lich. And there's the Purple Dragon Knight and stuff like that. There are some cool things in there, but really, it's with almost any major book that comes out, Sword Coast gets pushed lower and lower on the list. Technically, for now, it's at number 6. The next big book that comes out that is an adventure, it's probably going to get pushed to number 7. I just don't think it's worth the price tag. It's as thin, if not a little thinner than Xanathar's Guide at the same price. It's almost all fluff. If you really care about Sword Coast, playing on the Sword Coast and playing in Forgotten Realms, then yeah. But at that point, I'm looking at more as an adventure book that happens to have some mechanical things in it than an actual supplement for the system. But with that, hopefully next time I will get to talk about Savage Worlds and my Savage Worlds buying guide. But that'll be next week, so bye guys. If you like that video, check out another video over here. Whatever it is, it's probably pretty good. Don't forget to like, share so other people can find the channel, and subscribe right up there. YouTube now won't let me put a link to the Patreon, but there is a link down in the description below. So if you want to help support the channel, check that out, and I will catch you guys next time.